I didn't even open the letter right away. It sat on my kitchen counter for 2 days, unopened, wedged between grocery coupons and a utility bill. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and old-fashioned. Real paper, not the cheap stuff. My name was handwritten in careful cursive. That alone made my stomach tighten, because the only person who still wrote like that was my grandfather, and my grandfather had been dead for 6 months. When I finally tore it open, I expected something sentimental. A note, a keepsake, maybe an apology for being distant near the end. What I got instead was a legal notice. You are hereby informed that you are the sole inheritor of the water rights and controlling easements associated with Lake Briarwood, encompassing approximately 2,100 acres. I read that line 3 times. Then I laughed, out loud, because it sounded ridiculous. I lived in a modest rented townhouse. I worked remotely in IT. I had student loans. I did not own a lake. I had never even seen a 2,100-acre lake. But as I kept reading, the laughter drained out of me. The letter explained that my grandfather had quietly purchased the water rights, not the land, not the houses, but the entire lake itself, back in the 1970s, before the area was developed. He'd kept them under a trust. When the HOA-controlled luxury community around the lake was built decades later, they'd never bought the rights. They'd assumed no one would challenge them. And now those rights were mine. I sat down hard in my chair. Lake Briarwood wasn't just a pond with ducks. It was the centerpiece of a high-end HOA neighborhood. Multi-million-dollar homes, private docks, manicured walking paths, boat launches, and exclusive lake access marketed as the crown jewel of the community. Access onto a lake they didn't own. The attorney's contact information was at the bottom. I called immediately. That phone call lasted nearly 2 hours. By the end of it, my hands were shaking, because legally, ironclad legally, I controlled all recreational use, all commercial use, dock permissions, water extraction, and most importantly, access. The HOA had built their entire identity around that lake, and they had no idea it wasn't theirs. Yet, the attorney advised me to notify the HOA formally. Expect pushback, he said calmly. They've assumed control for decades. People don't like finding out they were wrong. That turned out to be the understatement of the century. The moment the HOA board received the notice, my phone exploded. Emails, voicemails, certified letters. The first voicemail was almost funny. A woman's voice, clipped and irritated. Hello, this is Linda Matthews, president of the Briarwood Lake HOA. There appears to be some confusion regarding ownership of our community lake. Please call me immediately so we can clear this up. I called back. She answered on the first ring. No confusion, she said sharply. The lake belongs to the homeowners. I own the water rights, I replied. I'm happy to provide documentation. There was a pause. Then she laughed. A short, dismissive laugh. That's not how this works, she said. You can't just show up and claim a lake. I stayed calm. I didn't show up. I inherited it, and it's been legally documented since 1978. Her tone shifted instantly, from amused to cold. Well, she said, we'll be disputing that. Within a week, the HOA sent a cease and desist accusing me of harassment. That was my first real taste of HOA logic. They also continued business as usual. Boat permits issued, docks maintained, events scheduled, all without acknowledging my ownership. So my attorney sent a second letter. This one was different. It stated clearly that continued unauthorized use of the lake would constitute trespass and violation of water rights law, and that enforcement would begin in 30 days. That's when things got ugly. The HOA president sent a community-wide email naming me directly. She called me a scammer, a liar, some out-of-state opportunist trying to extort the neighborhood. Residents began posting about me on local forums. Someone found my LinkedIn. Someone else sent me a message that simply read, "You better drop this." That night I didn't sleep, not because I was scared of them, but because I realized something terrifying. They weren't going to back down. They were going to overreach. The first violation happened on a Saturday morning. I got a call from my attorney at 7:12 a.m. They blocked your access, he said. What? They installed a gate on the only service road that legally leads to the lake. HOA controlled. They're denying you entry. I drove out there immediately. When I arrived there it was. A brand new steel gate, locked. A sign bolted to it. Private property, co-members only. I stood there staring at it in disbelief. They had locked me out of my own lake. I called the non-emergency police line. An officer arrived, reviewed the documents, and shook his head. This isn't legal, he said. They can't do this. He knocked on the HOA office door. No answer. By Monday, the HOA escalated further. They sent contractors to expand docks without permission. They approved a commercial kayak rental partnership. They even announced a summer lake festival, complete with fireworks over the water. All of it without authorization. My attorney filed an injunction. The HOA ignored it. Then they made the worst mistake of all. They fined me. A $5,000 violation notice appeared in my mailbox, accusing me of disrupting community harmony, interfering with HOA operations, threatening shared amenities. That was the moment my disbelief turned into anger. They weren't just wrong. They were arrogant enough to think they were untouchable. And that arrogance would cost them everything. The hearing took place 3 weeks later. The courtroom was packed. HOA board members sat together, confident, whispering and smirking. Their attorney argued first. He spoke about community expectations, historical use, and implied ownership. Then it was our turn. My attorney stood and said one sentence that changed the entire room. None of that overrides recorded water rights. He submitted the original deeds, the trust documents, the easement maps. The judge reviewed them silently. You could hear people breathing. After 20 minutes, the judge looked up. "These rights are valid," she said. "They were never transferred." Linda Matthews went pale. The judge continued. "The HOA has been operating under false assumptions for decades." Then came the hammer. She issued a temporary restraining order halting all lake activity, a cease and desist against the HOA, a requirement to remove all unauthorized structures. The lake was shut down. Instantly. No boats, no docks, no festivals. Home values dipped overnight. Residents panicked. And then the lawsuit started. Not from me, from the homeowners. They sued the HOA for misrepresentation, negligence, loss of property value. The HOA's insurance refused coverage. Within months, they were bankrupt. Linda Matthews resigned. The board dissolved. The community was forced to renegotiate access with me, on my terms. I could have been vindictive. I could have charged outrageous access fees. I didn't. Instead, I offered fair, transparent licensing agreements. Some residents apologized. Some never spoke to me again. The lake reopened, controlled, lawful, peaceful. And the HOA? Gone. Their office closed. Their signs removed. Their authority dissolved. All because they assumed power they never had. All because they thought entitlement could override law. Sometimes the quiet letter on your counter changes everything. And sometimes, the people who overreach the hardest fall the fastest.